You're listening to Milwaukee Mafia, your podcast dose of Wisconsin Mafia and true crime history.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Milwaukee Mafia. I'm Eric.
I'm Gavin.
Gavin, we're back again. What do you got for us? Anything? Or did you forget to do?
No, I got nothing. Well, first of all, I'd like to give a shout out
To his drink.
to my drink, to Liquid Death Mountain Water.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that sounds terrible. So is it just literally water?
It's literally just water,
So
not
it's
even
just-
flavored.
It's just water with a cool can.
Yep, just water.
Right.
This can of water was given to me by John Pata, and who's a local movie maker.
How is John Pata doing?
John Pata's doing great.
Is he still making movies?
He is. He just finished up a movie editing right now, so he's sending it off to get the sound and whatnot over the top of it.
Awesome.
It's called Black Mold, so everybody look out for that.
Black Mold, huh?
But anyway, so Liquid Death was a sponsor on that movie, which is why I now have a can of Liquid Death.
Calling Liquid Death to sponsor the Milwaukee Mafia
Yeah.
podcast.
It's literally just water. They also have sparkling water, but this is regular water.
All right, so review
Of?
the water.
Oh, it's good. I mean, it's plain. It's absolutely plain water. It's not flavored, so it's water.
It can't disappoint.
It can't disappoint. But their deal is they put it in a can under the idea that cans are more recyclable than plastic bottles are.
Ah,
I don't know the ins and outs of that, but that's the theory, is that it's a better environmental water than a bottled water is.
and I would agree with that because it's more likely that a can's going to get recycled
Oh, heck
than
yeah.
a bottle.
Heck
so.
yeah. So that's the idea behind it. But yeah, it's just water. But it's good
Awesome.
if you like water.
All right, so on to more important things.
No, that was very important. People need to know. Yeah, so you might recall a while back on the Patreon, and for people who don't remember, we have a Patreon where we talk about other related things to the Milwaukee Mafia.
And some sort of unrelated things, but that's okay.
Yes, but for the low cost of, I believe it's just $1 a month.
$2, I believe.
Is it $2 a
Yes,
month?
it's a
Well,
little spendy. It's a little
okay,
spendy.
it's a little spendy, but you get 2 episodes a month. It's $1 an episode, and it's a good time. So anyway, a while back on there, we had somebody ask about the connection between Milwaukee and Louisiana or New Orleans.
Okay.
And we answered that question.
I don't really remember that, but we've had a lot of questions asking about connections between different places.
Yes.
So,
Well, anyway, so we are back to that. So this is going to be that, but we're actually, I've fleshed it out a little bit more. So
okay.
it's still really hard to follow. So bear with me this time, everybody. But I'll try to do this. So the guys we're talking about now are James Joseph Donohue III and Frank Highland Russell. And these are Milwaukee guys. They're not mob guys. They're just guys from Milwaukee. They're both successful businessmen. James Donohue is in a business in Milwaukee, the Industrial Disposal Company, and he's also a diplomat between the United States and other countries, most notably the Dominican Republic. And Frank Russell is a diamond importer, so he knows other people, internationally as well, because he's importing diamonds. So these are big international guys who just happen to live in Milwaukee. So there's that. One day, Donohue and Russell are in conversation. This is in 1961. They're in conversation, and Donohue has learned that Carlos Marcello, who is the head of the mafia in New Orleans, he's in a bit of trouble because he's constantly under threat of being deported. The government's been trying to deport this guy for 10 years at this point. So he's constantly under threat, and he's like, we gotta help this guy out. Now, why Donohue cares, I have no idea. But he talks to Russell about it, and Russell says, I think I can help this guy out. Why Russell cares, I don't know. But allegedly, there's a cash reward if you can help him. So I'm guessing that is the incentive here. Not that they really have any personal interest.
So there's a cash reward to help him not get deported?
Yes.
So who's paying the cash reward?
He is.
Oh, so he makes a cash reward available to anybody that can. Oh, okay.
The mob guy.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. And he's been dragging this through the courts for 10 years because he got caught on this BS. And I'll even say it's BS. I don't normally take a position, but I'm going to take a position on this one. So like in 1938, it's a long time ago, Marcelo was arrested and did some jail time for dealing in marijuana.
Okay.
He did his time. He got out. Everyone said, we're cool. Then in 1952, the federal government changed the immigration laws and said anyone who's not a citizen, if they have a past criminal record, you can deport them.
Okay.
So then he becomes a target, not only because he's not a citizen, but because he's a big mob guy. And so he's been fighting this in the courts for like 10 years because he's like, this is complete crap. Like, I got arrested. I did my jail time. You said I was cool. You can't come back 10 years later and then kick me out for that. I've already established a family and everything else here. And I would tend to agree with him. Like, getting him in trouble, passing a law that changes something he did in the past seems pretty unfair.
I would totally agree with that too. That sounds like they're just searching for a loophole to get him out. I mean, that's really what it is.
Yeah, if you pass a law and you say anybody who's caught breaking the law and they're not a citizen, you can deport them. Absolutely, that makes sense. But then saying like, let's go back to the book and see anyone who's
ever broken a law
seems kind of unfair. But anyways, so Russell thinks he can help out. He gets the number to call, so he calls New Orleans. He's talking to people. He says, I think I got an idea. I think I can help. And the guy that he talks to is not Carlos, but he talks to Carlos's brother, Sam. And he says, okay, we're interested, but here's the thing. We don't know you. We got to make sure you're cool. So Frank Russell talks to Frank Ballisteria. I don't know how they know each other. I don't even know if they do know each other. But he talks to Ballisteria and he says, hey, I'm trying to help out Marcelo and whatever. And Ballistria's like, it's cool. I got your back. So they are in a room together and they call back to New Orleans. And Frank Russell's talking to them. And then Ballisteria comes on the line. He goes, yeah, this guy's cool. He's totally fine to work with. Don't worry. It's fine.
So now, would Frank Ballisteria know this guy from New Orleans, or
see, that's the thing. Later on, the FBI asked Frank Russell how Ballisteria knew Marcelo, and he didn't know. He assumed that they just knew each other because they were both top mob guys, but he didn't know if they've ever actually met.
So it might have just been a thing of, I'm a mob boss, you're a mob boss. I'm saying this guy's a good guy to work with, and that could be the extent of their relationship.
Right.
This could actually be the first time they're ever meeting. Well, not meeting, but talking.
Yeah, it could be. And it's like, at this point in time, like, this is 1961. Anybody, like, you didn't have to be in the mob to know who Marcelo was. He was getting headlines all the time because the government wanted him deported and he was fighting it. So he was pretty well known. Ballisteria at this point was not very well known. So I don't know, I don't know how that works. Like, in the background, if every so often you get like updates being like, so here's the new mob guys around the country. I don't know. But apparently Marcelo knew that he was okay, be like, oh yeah, Ballesteria's the guy. I don't know. But we don't know if they've ever met before this or if they just knew of each other's reputation. It's not very clear. And in fact, going forward in this story, there's really nothing to do with Milwaukee Mafia or anything going forward in this story. But just because Ballisteria plays this small role in it, that's why it's on this podcast. It's going to get weird from here on out. All right. So Russell says, I can help you out. And Marcelo's like, yeah, that's cool. I'm offering this $1 million reward to anyone who can prevent my deportation. Again, the government's been trying to deport him for years. They threw around some ideas. One idea is that they say, who the government hates even more than the mafia? they hate Jimmy Hoffa. So how about this? How about we work out a deal where we get guys who hate Jimmy Hoffa to testify against him for the government if the government will let us go? That's one idea they toss around. They don't really follow through much on that. Still 1961, Frank Russell goes to Washington, D.C. There he meets up in a hotel room with Carlos Marcello and this James Donohue guy. They're in Russell's room. While there, they talk about General Rafael Trujillo, I'm sure I butchered that. But anyway, he's the dictator of the Dominican Republic. So Donohue knows the dictator of the Dominican Republic because he used to be like the diplomat between these places.
I'm starting to remember this story now.
Okay.
Again, so
yeah. So their plan is, okay, so you've got $1 million you're willing to pay to not get deported. How about we split that money and we give 200,000 of that million to the dictator. And in exchange, he helps create fake birth certificates and fake identification saying that you were born in the Dominican Republic. That way, if you do get deported, it's not a big deal. You're just the Dominican Republic. You can come back anytime you want. So it doesn't completely solve the problem, but it's a workaround. Yeah. So that's an idea they toss around. It doesn't end up happening, but that's one thing they discuss. Okay, so before they could even do that, this is something they discuss 2 months later, before they get anything really going. The Justice Department, under the direction of Attorney General Bobby Kennedy, they seize Carlos Marcello while he's at a routine visit to the immigration office. Now, apparently, because he's not a citizen, he has to check in periodically for whatever reason. I don't understand how that works, but I guess he regularly goes to the immigration office. So he just thinks he's going there like any other day. But on this particular day, he goes there and they grab him. Well, here's the thing. So he didn't have these forged Dominican Republic documents yet, but he had already enacted a similar plan in the previous time before these other guys got on board. And he had forged documents saying that he was born in Guatemala. The government knew that he wasn't from Guatemala. I mean, this guy is a Sicilian. He's not from Guatemala. But that's what his documents say. So they grab him, they put him on a military plane, and they fly him to Guatemala, and they drop him off there in the middle of nowhere.
So I'm a little confused by this point.
Yeah.
So like immigration documents, like, so does the government not have copies of these documents? You just keep them on you, and every time you go see immigration? Because
I have no idea.
Yeah, like how do you get fake documents to, like, because they must have looked at his documents the last time he checked in. Yeah. And they didn't say Guatemala. So how do they explain now?
I don't know. I don't know. There's somebody out there who probably knows immigration better or knows, about the New Orleans Mafia. Like, that's not something I'm very knowledgeable about. Like I said, I'm telling this the best I can. There's going to be some gaps in here because I don't fully get it. But this is the parts that I'm able to determine.
So this Guatemala part of it,
yeah,
was this in the original story, or is this stuff you figured out since we did the Patreon?
I've greatly expanded this since the original version.
Okay, like, because I don't remember the Guatemala part.
I don't think it was in there.
Yeah,
I don't think it was in there. So okay, he's deported. He's deported to Guatemala in April of 1961. Okay.
Okay.
He's there. He's in Guatemala, not enjoying himself. May 1961. He's still in Guatemala. While he's there, the CIA assassinates the dictator of the Dominican Republic.
Wow.
So that plan isn't going to work
anymore.
Okay. Yeah, that's off the table. This guy is no longer an option because he's dead. Anyway, so there's that. Then a month after that, Marcello is back in the United States from Guatemala. No one's really quite sure how he got back in, but he got back in. Russell and Donohue are still talking to each other this whole time, and they're like, "Okay, we gotta help this guy out. They're hearing word that he's back. And they're like, okay, so the deal's still on. If he's back, he's still going to pay us to not get deported. Like, it's back on the table. So they're working with this, trying to figure out something. They're calling New Orleans. New Orleans is calling back to Milwaukee. He's got an office. Frank Russell's got an office in the Plankinton Arcade, which, I mean, I don't even think it's there anymore, but maybe it is. Maybe it's just called something different. But people from Milwaukee might know where that is. It's at 7170 Plankinton. So, anyway, so they're talking back and forth. And eventually, Carlos's brother Sam says, you don't need to do anything more. We've got it figured out. Everything's cool. So at this point, things should be slowing down. But Russell and Donohue continue to talk to each other. They're thinking, okay, we gotta help this guy out some more, right? At this point, the FBI has caught wind of some of this stuff. So they come in, they talk to Frank Russell, and he breaks down almost immediately. And he tells them the whole story up to this point, which is how we know it, because he's like, here's everything we've been doing to try to help this guy out. He goes, these are the people he knows. He says Donohue's also a friend with another friend of Bobby Kennedy. So he's got mutual friends with Bobby Kennedy. So he's like, that's how we were going to do the Jimmy Hoffa thing, by talking to the mutual friend. He goes, we had this all planned out. He even says, I'm going to tell you how he got back into the U.S. from Guatemala.
Okay.
So Frank Russell apparently has some high-level friends in Guatemala. He's friends with a guy named Guillermo Flores Avendano, who was the Guatemalan ambassador to Rome for some reason, and a man named George Ruiz, who was a colonel in the Guatemalan Air Force and the head of an airline, a private airline. And by knowing these guys, they were able to work out a deal where Marcelo was flown on the private airline back into the U.S.
Okay.
So they smuggled him back in by knowing guys in the Guatemalan government.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of back and forth with Donohue and Russell talking to each other. But at this point, nothing really seems to happen. They don't come up with a new plan. Nothing really goes forward from there. And then finally, for the last time, Russell is contacted by the FBI in 1962. So a little over a year since this has all started. They said, "Have you learned anything new about this since this whole thing kind of fell through?" And he goes, "No, I don't know anything more about it." He said, "You know what? I'm done with this whole thing. I'm going to go take a European vacation. I'm not going to be back for a few months. You guys handle this yourself." And the FBI office cut off contact with him at that point. Another year goes by, 1963, and Marcelo goes on trial for conspiracy to defraud the United States government. How was he defrauding the government? By using false Guatemalan documents. He ends up getting acquitted on that charge and is never deported at any point in time. It doesn't hurt his case that even though he did have forged documents that he was defrauding the government with, the government willingly knew that and used them against him. So they didn't come out looking so great on that either.
Wow.
So anyway, I don't know. There's a lot of convoluted stuff because I don't fully get all the international stuff. Long story short, there's two guys in Milwaukee. They're trying to get the mob boss in New Orleans not deported. He gets deported anyway. They help him get back in thanks to corrupt government officials. And the only really Milwaukee connection, other than that these two guys are from Milwaukee, is that to get the okay to help him out, they had to have Frank Ballisteria say, yeah, these guys are, or at least the one guy is okay to work with. And so it's a very, very loose Milwaukee Mafia story, but it's a wild story.
And I will say, Gavin, that I think you really cleared it up from the Patreon.
Okay.
Because I remember being like, what the heck's going on in this story in the Patreon? And this makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, well, it was hard to get it to this point, to be completely honest with you. So these documents, these FBI documents, came out of the JFK investigation, of all things. So the JFK investigation, like Carlos Marcello was one guy who they investigated a lot. So when the documents started going public in the last few years, these documents became public. But they've been releasing them in a really crappy way, where they'll do like 2 pages here, 5 pages there. I think when we did it like the first time, I didn't have it all together. This time I really went out of my way to look up every individual person and try to put their pieces in it, because all of this should all have been one big document. That isn't the way it was released. So like the document on Marcello says one thing, the document on Donohue says another, and you got to get the whole story, you got to piece it together. So I probably missed something the first time through that didn't add up. This time the story is convoluted, but it actually makes sense. It's just really weird. And I still think there's more out there. There's probably more pieces that I couldn't find or they haven't been released yet, but it's wacky stuff.
So I think I probably asked this the first time too.
Sure.
But these 2 guys that are helping him out, the 2 from Milwaukee, so it's what, Donohue and
Russell. Yeah.
So do they have connections at all to the Milwaukee Mafia? Because
no.
So like, did they even know Frank Ballisteria at the point where they brought Frank Ballisteria into this?
I don't know. I don't know. Like, that's the thing. So Donohue has no connection whatsoever, as far as I can tell. Now, he apparently already knew Marcello, so he's got that. But the only connection to the Milwaukee Mafia is that one moment when Ballisteria and Russell are in the same room on the phone. And from what little I can gather, it doesn't seem like they're friends.
Or, and it's not like you ever see any reference of Russell.
Yeah.
At any other
than this one incident, Russell never shows up in documents again.
Yeah. And it seems like, because he was the one that, wasn't he like a diplomat to some other?
No, Donohue's the diplomat.
Okay.
Frank Russell's a diamond importer.
Okay.
So, I mean, it'd be really cool to make a connection there. Be like, oh, the mob knows a guy who imports diamonds, because there'd probably be some really cool behind-the-scenes stuff there about, getting wholesale diamonds or whatever. But no, it's not there. Like, if they did know each other, if they had any kind of business going beyond that one day, it's not in the records. So I don't know.
And, okay, so it makes sense that Donohue had probably access to people and resources that could help this guy.
Yes.
How did Russell fit into this?
No clue.
Like,
again, I mean, it's through the diamond importing, like he knows a lot of foreign people, but I don't know how that makes it a Guatemalan connection. Mm-hmm. I guess maybe, I don't know, but I don't think Guatemala is known for its diamonds.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
Who had the connections to Guatemala? Did you say
Russell
that?
did.
Russell did.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe he was just connected in some other way to a lot of different places, like maybe he just... I mean, maybe this
I don't
is
know.
what he did.
I mean, it could be, and I don't know if you know this, but the diamond market is kind of shady. So I mean, it wouldn't shock me if he was dealing with questionable people.
And he could have been exporting diamonds to Guatemala.
He could have.
That totally would make sense as well. So
yes,
interesting.
So I don't know. There's, like I said, I think there's still pieces that are missing, and they may or may not be out there. This is entirely like 100% from the FBI documents. Like, it didn't make the news or anything. So it's just completely in the FBI documents. And the FBI didn't care about Russell or Donohue. I mean, they cared a little bit, just like they had to background check them to make sure they were okay. But their main thing is they're trying to get dirt on Marcello. So the Milwaukee connection is so minor in the way they were approaching it. So if there's more out there, I want to see it. I want something to really click here, because even though the story makes sense, it raises a lot of questions. Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, when we did the Patreon, you had mentioned a lot of questions about whether Frank Ballisteria would have ever been involved in this. Do you remember that? And
whether he would have been involved? In what way?
Well, I think you just said the whole fact that he was in that room making that phone call.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless maybe I don't remember, does the FBI files have a tapped call that that this is just testimony. And
right, at no point did, at least during this, they didn't bug the phones. They went back and they checked the phone records, so they knew who was calling who, but that's it. They don't know what anybody said. And
I think I remember us talking about that it seems suspicious that how Frank Ballisteria would have been brought into that.
I think it is suspicious.
And
it makes sense that they'd want to get this Russell guy okayed before they bring him in, because they're obviously doing something very questionable. But yeah, I don't know, because I don't know the link between Russell and Ballisteria, and I don't even know if there is one. That's what I find so strange, is that he's sticking his neck out. He's being like, yeah, this guy is cool.
Cool, yeah.
How does he know this guy is cool?
Cool, because we have no idea that he's ever done any business with him before, ever. So, yeah, that is very suspicious.
Yeah.
As well as...
Yeah, I mean, see, now we're going off on a tangent. But yeah, but it's a good point, because this guy could be an undercover agent or an informant or something, and be like, hey, I need you're okay to work with Marcelo. And then Ballisteria's like, yeah, this guy's cool. And now Ballisteria just totally set up Marcelo. That's not the case, but I mean, that's what could have happened if he didn't know the guy.
And I also feel like there's a good possibility that Frank Ballisteria would have known who Marcelo was.
Right.
But like you said...
I don't, again, whether they knew each other personally, I know that he knew who he was. Yeah.
But on the flip side, you said Frank Ballisteria wasn't really a big name at this point in time. So for Marcelo to actually know Frank Ballisteria, if they didn't know each other personally, would have been kind of a stretch.
Right.
So not only is he vouching for a guy that is very suspicious that he would vouch for, because it doesn't seem like he knows him.
Right.
But at the same time, Marcelo trusting Frank Ballisteria could be suspicious too.
To a point.
It is reasonable that if he realizes he's running the Mafia in Milwaukee, that he might that might be enough for him. But
yeah, I think that he would probably know that, or at least be able to
verify,
to figure it out very quickly. Yeah, I mean, then again, it could be like, how does he know? Like, when another guy comes on the phone line being like, yeah, this is Frank, and this guy's cool. Like, how does he know that is him, even? I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of questions here. But, and if anybody knows, like I said, I, by no stretch of the imagination, do I know much about New Orleans or any of that. So if somebody does, and this is something they've looked into more, you definitely let me know, because...
And
somebody probably knows a lot more about this. I don't know who that person is, and everybody in this story is dead. I mean, Donohue, Russell, Ballisteria, they're all gone. So,
and hopefully maybe someday we can make a connection between Russell and Ballisteria.
I would love that. I would love that very much.
If it's out there somewhere, because it could be very much buried in one of those reports that you probably have sitting on your computer that you haven't completely gone through yet.
It could be.
Or the 100 reports that you're waiting for the FBI to finally print off and scan for you.
Yeah, and it could be. It could just be as simple as guy has an office downtown, and Ballisteria runs clubs downtown. So they just, they know
each other.
They run into each other while having dinner
or something.
Yeah.
And maybe they didn't even really ever do business together. But,
right.
And that's actually reasonable, because we always talk about Ballisteria as the mob boss.
Yeah.
But he was also very much a big business owner in Milwaukee.
Oh, sure.
Which in big business owners know other big business owners. Yeah. So it's reasonable to be that they have experience with each other from that. So
yeah, I don't know. It sounds funny to call him a big business owner, but he was involved in the bar and restaurant business. You know a lot of people if you're in the bar and restaurant business. So,
exactly. So. All right. Well, is there anything else to this?
No, that's it. I'm just hoping somebody else out there has answers, and they
short and sweet.
They shoot them our way at MilwaukeeMafia@gmail.com.
Yeah, all of our resident experts of the New Orleans Mafia, send us an email and give us more info on this, because we want to know.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have reached out to somebody, but I don't really have a great contact for New Orleans stuff. So.
Fortunately, well, wherever you are, reach out to Gavin. So,
yeah.
So, all right, then we will wrap this episode up. Gavin, you do your contact info.
Yeah, like I said, MilwaukeeMafia@gmail.com is a great way to reach me or us. MilwaukeeMafia.com is the website. These notes will go up there along with all previous show notes. And you can also find me on Facebook, although we just had a meeting yesterday where I was told not to tell people to look on Facebook. But you can find it there if you prefer it.
All right, and then we will be back next week with the Patreon. So if you're not a Patreon member, make sure to get over to MilwaukeeMafia.com, click on the Patreon link, subscribe, become a listener, and get access to those extra 2 episodes. They're very fun.
They are fun.
As well as informational. So, and as always, leave a review on your favorite podcast player, and we will be back in 1 week with the Patreon, 2 weeks with another Mafia. All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Cool.
Thanks for tuning in to the Milwaukee Mafia podcast. Join us next time for another look back at Wisconsin Mafia and true crime history.